Scott, one thing we didn't get to during the TV show that maybe we'd like to touch on during the web portion of this is what is happening at Port San Antonio. They have a brand new executive director. The other one left under some unusual circumstances. Can you talk about what Port San Antonio is and why it's important, what is happening over there now?
I think there's been a lot of conversation, maybe also confusion about what Port San Antonio should be, what it is, what it can be. Comparisons made to what's happened at Brooks City Base that aren't truly, not really apples to apples. Jim Perschbach, the new interim CEO of Port San Antonio, is coming in with a kind of a different attack on what to do with the 1,900 acres. And I think his, at least for now, strategy is let's not rush to just fill up land with stuff just for the sake of saying we did. Let's try to bring in things that actually work with what we already have there and what can actually work with what the city's economic development strategy is moving forward.
Port San Antonio and Brooks City Base, or Brooks now, have both been amazing success stories. I remember when they shut down both Kelly Air Force Base and Brooks Air Force Base, the tales of doom that were spread around about how horrible it was going to be for the economy. My understanding is there's more people now working at both of those facilities than there were at the height of their utilization as military bases. So they are success stories already, right?
I would say definitely Brooks, and again, in a totally different way, just because it's also got a heavy retail and residential component. Port San Antonio's success story, its ultimate big success story, is what it can do in terms of economic development. What can it do with the core industries here that we already got a head start on, and how to grow those.
You know, I'd like to open this up for everybody because it's an interesting topic. San Antonio businessman Brad Parscale, who, as you all know, is one of the founders of Giles Parscale, which is an incredibly successful web design firm. He led President Trump's very, very successful digital initiatives during the 2016 campaign, and now he is the 2020 campaign chairman for President Trump's reelection. He is putting the pressure on Mayor Nierenberg and City Council to invite the 2020 Republican National Convention to San Antonio, something that is going over kind of flat at City Hall. Do we want either, regardless of whether it's the Republicans or Democrats, would a presidential nominating convention in San Antonio be worth the amount of money the city would have to put out in economic development, improvements, in police overtime, and Terry, the incredible transportation hassle that would result of having all these dignitaries?
It would be a strain. Absolutely.
So is that something we want?
Hotels would love it, wouldn't they? And the convention center. But as I recall, there was another effort years ago to bring the Democratic convention here, and we couldn't sustain it, and we didn't have the kind of space that sort of event needs. We have been very successful bringing the Final Four here, and that has been a sort of a pattern that the city will probably want. I don't know about a big convention and what that will bring to San Antonio.
Well, and to your point of what San Antonio has become and what we're celebrating right now, our diversity, our inclusiveness, I don't know that that would promote that as much as it might take away from that.
It
now,
might be
Elaine,
more divisive.
Yeah, we talked about Mexican-American studies. The Republican Party says they'd love San Antonio just simply because they see it as being an outreach to the large Mexican-American population. Would that work?
That might be questionable. I think that there are so many major issues that the Republican Party has not addressed regarding the Latino population in the United States at every turn. When you think of what's happening in Puerto Rico and the inattentiveness of the administration, when you consider its stands on legal immigration as well as refugees who come to this country, I'm not sure. I think it would inspire protests.
Terry,
but Terry might be able to address that better.
Okay, Terry, one thing I'd like to ask you about is we've had all of these, we had light rail in 2001. We've had initiatives on transportation for literally as long as I can remember, and that's a long time. Fast forward to 2038. How are we going to be getting around, in your opinion? What's your vision for what transportation will look like? Will it look pretty much like it does today? Or will it be far different?
I think it'll be far different. I mean, it's a lot like what happened to the advent of computing and our lifestyles when the internet came on the scene. We're now seeing digital and autonomous vehicles that has the opportunity to transform our fleets. And I've been through, I mean, hours and hours and hours of testimony I've listened to through the years in Transportation Committee. And one of the things we're seeing, particularly with trucking, let's say, in freight movement, if they're on the highway versus some other types of modes that we're also seeing, whether it's the Hyperloop or other things, you're going to see platooning of vehicles where they have technology that can allow them to be much closer together and be sort of traveling in a block in a way where there's vehicle-to-vehicle communication, where they try to say it's safe, but we're still seeing a lot of those kinks being worked out. But by 2038, a lot of those kinks are going to be worked through, and we're going to be traveling in a different way. I think we're going to see a lot of robots taking over human jobs, and so there's not going to be the same types of need for commuting that we may have today. I just think that it's going to be really a completely different world in 2038 than what we see today by traditional commuting standards anyway.
But if we look at population trends, San Antonio is going to grow by another million. We're at 1.5. We're going to have, by 2040, we'll have another million living in San Antonio. I think we're going to have more traffic congestion. I think all that freedom that we have enjoyed might have to be limited by giving us more options in which to get around, and public transit is going to have to be one of those options.
And to that point, and what you had mentioned earlier about dedicated lanes, one of the things that stands out most about what the mayor told me about the possibility with trackless trains is if you don't give them a dedicated space, no one's going to use them. What's the point of sitting on a new vehicle if you're sitting in the same congestion, going nowhere with everyone else?
Scott Bailey, Terri Hall, Elaine Ayala, thank you very much for joining us as the conversation continues.